Hello everyone, you are very welcome to our open day talk on our law programmes at NUI Galway. My name is Lisa and I am the Student Recruitment Officer in NUI Galway School of Law. And in today's talk, we are going to give you an overview of studying law at NUI Galway. And then after this, we will give you a short talk on each of our 5 full law degrees: the Law and Taxation course, the Law and Business course, the Law Bcl course, the Law Bcl Criminology and Criminal Justice course, and the Law Bcl and Human Rights course. So this talk will finish at approximately 12:15 p.m. Then at 1 o'clock, we will have another talk on the law student experience. We will have 4 current students join this talk, and they will give insights into what it is like to be a law student at NUI Galway. And we will also give you the opportunity to ask our current students questions. And then finally, from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m, if you have any questions about studying law at NUI Galway, please join us at 2 o'clock for our live Q&A session. We will have a number of academics online from 2 to 3 available to answer your questions. And I would now like to pass you over to Dr. Conor Hanley, who is going to give you an overview of studying law at NUI Galway. Conor is a lecturer in the School of Law and also a leading author of a number of books, including An Introduction to Irish Criminal Law. Conor also regularly works with rape crisis centres and domestic violence agencies on research and policy issues.
Okay, Lisa, thank you very much. Again, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate you giving up your Saturday to come talk to us. We also are very grateful for your interest, not only in studying law, but studying law at NUI Galway. It's a very exciting time for you. You're starting to plan your futures. We know you have a lot of options available to you. So we don't take your interest for granted. We really do appreciate you spending your time with us this morning. As Lisa said, I'm going to give just kind of an overview of studying law at NUI Galway. I'm not going to go into the individual programs. My colleagues will do that after I finish. I'm going to speak for about half an hour. And in that time, I'm going to try to answer 2 questions. The first, as you see on the slide on the screen, is why you might consider studying law. Many of you might have made up your mind to study law. Some of you might just be thinking about it. Some of you might just be here for passing interest. But I'm going to try and make a short case why you might study law. And then secondly, I'm going to try to answer the question why you might consider studying law with us at NUI Galway. So, as to the first question, why you might study law, look, there's loads of reasons, and everybody has their own reasons. They're all perfectly valid. But I'm going to mention really just 2, time constraints being what they are. The first is just the nature of the study of law itself. It's a fascinating discipline. Essentially, law is the process by which we try to regulate ourselves, our country, the relationships that we have with other people, work relationships, and the relationship between individuals and the state. These are really big questions, really questions of fundamental importance. And you see on the screen there, I have a photograph. It's a photograph taken at the recent vigil for Sarah Everhart. This is the young woman who was murdered in England. And a fairly spontaneous outpouring of grief and anger at what happened resulted in this vigil, which was, of course, in very clear breach of coronavirus regulations and restrictions. And this is the photograph. You see all the flowers that people have left in memory of Miss Everhart. You see the line of police officers and you see the crowd behind them. And this photograph illustrates some of the fundamental issues that law students and lawyers have to grapple with. And indeed, many of them our first-year students will have to grapple with. So we'll be talking about things like the right of protest, and which is related to the right of free expression, your right to step forward, to speak your mind, to protest against government policy, to protest against perceived inaction on the part of the state. But those rights, while they undoubtedly exist, are currently somewhat limited because, of course, as you know, we're in the middle of a medical emergency. We have a highly transmissible virus in our community, and as a result, limitations on free expression, on assembly, on protest have been imposed to try to stop the virus from spreading. How do those 3 points meet together? Where do we draw the line? What kind of protest and what kind of expression can we permit when we have such a transmissible virus? Should we have limitations at all? There's also an issue about violence against women, brought home very much by this very tragic case of Miss Everhart being murdered. How do we prevent, how do we limit the violence that some women experience? What steps should we take? This is very much an issue in criminal law, which is my subject area. And the state has grappled with it, not always very successfully. And there's also the issue of the role of policing. What is the role of the police? Some view the police as a very benign force, a force for protection. Others take a somewhat darker view, that maybe it's a force used for control. I think probably there's an element of truth in both. We do need to control people, but they are also there for protection. But again, opinions are going to vary. And these are the kinds of issues that lawyers and law students have to deal with. It's very, very difficult. There is no precise way of measuring where to put the dividing line between these principles. And as you will see, if you decide to study law, much of what law is about trying to figure out how to deal with clashes of principles. The clash between the principle of protecting people from a virus against their right to assembly and to express opposition to government policy, for example. It's very difficult, no precise answers. And that leads to a fundamental realization about the study of law, that it's about argument. It's not so much about rules. There are rules, but the study of law is about argument, how to persuade. And I'm going to come back to that later on when I talk about our very skills-based approach to teaching law. The second reason you might consider studying law is the very wide range of careers that can flow from a law degree. And on the slide here, I've mentioned some of them. Everybody knows about solicitor or barrister, and people have a tendency of thinking that a law degree leads only in the professional direction, that if you get a law degree, you kind of have to be a solicitor or barrister. That's not true. Many of our graduates do qualify professionally, but not all of them. And one of the truths of modern society is that it is increasingly legally regulated. Virtually every aspect of life has some element of legal regulation attached to it, which means that a knowledge of the law, an understanding of the legal process is becoming more and more important in more and more fields. And again, look at the list on screen. In the public sector, in graduate training programs for large companies. These companies want good, smart people who bring lots of different skills and disciplines to the table. Going into accountancy or banking, insurance. My first job after I got my law degree was in an insurance company in the claims department. Academia, what I do now. You teach, read, research, and write about legal issues. And also, there are some wonderful international opportunities at the European level, at the UN, and various bodies, international bodies, both governmental and non-governmental. So when you're considering whether or not you want to study law, keep in mind the breadth of career options that are open to you. Don't limit yourself to being a solicitor or a barrister. It's much, much wider than that. I might also add that a law degree travels quite well, particularly in the English-speaking countries, because we all have what's known as a common law legal system derived from the British legal system. So jurisdictions in the United States, in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, they will recognize our law degrees, and a number of our graduates have qualified professionally in other countries and are in practice in other countries. Now, there's a whole process that you need to go through. It's not simply you turn up, knock on the door, and they let you in. You will have to do exams over there in these different countries. But the process starts with your law degree, which will be recognized throughout the world. Can I get the next slide there, Lisa, please? Okay, one thing one question that I get asked a lot, and I meet a lot of prospective students and prospective parents, what kind of attributes should a potential law student have? I hear from parents all the time that my daughter is always fighting with me, God, she'd be a great lawyer. That doesn't necessarily follow. Law is about persuasion, it's not about arguing, and there is a difference. And the first point is that you have to amass a great deal of knowledge. You have to learn a lot about the law. In any particular area, you have to read statutes, you have to read cases, especially cases, maybe some commentaries. There is a mass of material to be read, and the lawyer absolutely has to prepare. So the first attribute I would say that marks out a good lawyer is a love of reading, a comfort with reading. If you really don't like reading, if reading is a big chore for you, then really law is not the best discipline for you to choose, because there's a god awful lot of it to be done, both as a student and later on in life professionally. Secondly, as I said, law is about persuasion, and persuasion starts with communication. You have to be able and be comfortable with communication, and that's both communicating through writing and communicating verbally. And thirdly, leading on from that, a degree of comfort with public speaking is useful, especially if you want to go down the barrister route, because that's what barristers do. They speak in court, they advocate for their client in court. But even as a solicitor, a comfort in speaking publicly is always going to be useful. And again, keep in mind the breadth of career options. Lawyers will be found in all walks of life, in all fields. Sometimes they're doing lawyer type work, sometimes they're doing policy work, but in all cases they're communicating publicly, verbally, or in writing. So I think these are the three main attributes that would suggest that you'd be good at law. You love reading, you're good at communicating, and you have some kind of a background or ability with public speaking. Now, don't worry too much about that last one, because you will have lots of opportunity for public speaking during your law degree with us. We will give you ample opportunities to improve. But this is just giving you an indication of the kind of attributes you should be thinking of. And this leads me on to the next slide, if we can get the next slide there, Lisa. I'm also often asked, are there any kind of subjects that I should be taking as a Leaving Cert student? And the answer really is no. Every Leaving Cert student, whatever discipline you're talking about, they all will encourage certain skills that will be useful. And I'll point to our current Chief Justice. He's a mathematician by background. And you might think, well, what does maths have to do with law? Actually, quite a lot, because mathematics develops the ability to think rationally and logically. And that is an incredibly useful skill for a lawyer, to be able to present a logical, rational argument. If you don't have a logical, rational argument, you're not going to persuade anybody. So that's the basis of persuasion. So a background in maths is actually really useful. So as I say, whatever subjects you take, you're developing skills. You don't even know it, but you're developing skills that will be useful. That said, from experience, we know that students who are good at English are obviously going to, that's going to be beneficial in studying law. Law is about language. So an ability to use that language effectively is going to be very useful. We also know, again, from experience, that some Leaving Cert subjects develop particular skills that are particularly useful for lawyers. And I mentioned their history, politics and society. Both of them involve reading a lot, accessing a huge amount of information that you then have to collate. So those kind of skills are going to be very useful. Obviously, language skills are going to be useful, especially if you're interested in international type law, or if you're interested in moving abroad and working abroad. And, you know, language skills are always good to have just on a personal level anyway. And then there are some particular Leaving Cert subjects that might be useful depending on which program you're going for. So especially if you're going for law and business or law and taxation, obviously subjects like business, economics, and accounting are going to be useful. So as a general rule, English, history, politics, and society, they'll be useful for any law degree of whatever specification. Languages are useful in whatever you do. And then you have some of the more particular kind of subjects depending on which precise degree you're looking at. So that's sort of the first part of my presentation, why you might consider studying law. As I said, there's loads of reasons why you might study law. I've given you just two. That doesn't mean that any other reasons you might have are suddenly invalid. Of course, they're not. Okay, but it's an introduction to the subject. Is really what I'm trying to achieve here. Can we move on to the next slide there, Lisa? Okay, the second question I want to look at is why, if you've decided to study law, well, why should you study law with us at NUI Galway? All the universities have law programs. They're very good. And of course, know many of our colleagues in the other law schools. They're excellent. So why should you come here? Well, I'm going to give a number of reasons. The first is kind of bragging a little bit. You want to go to an institution that will carry a little bit of weight. You want an institution whose name will mean something to prospective employers or to admissions officers for postgraduate programs. And NUI Galway has a very high standing, both nationally and internationally. On the slide here, as I said, we're bragging a little bit. We've been ranked as 85th law school in the world. Keep in mind that there are literally thousands of institutions around the world. We're number 85. And in 2019, we were very honored to be named the Law School of the Year. Now, these are rankings and awards and accolades that are given by bodies that are entirely external to us. Obviously, we're going to tell you we're brilliant. But these institutions, the Times Higher Education Supplement, the Irish Law Awards, they have nothing to do with us. They are entirely independent. They have looked at what we do, and this is their assessment. It's an independent, objective assessment, which tells you that if you get a law degree from NUI Galway, that degree is going to carry some weight wherever you go. And that's really important. If you're investing 4 years of your life, you want to get some bang for your buck here, not just a piece of paper, but a qualification that will be recognized and will help you on the next step in your career plan. So that's the first point. The standing of NUI Galway and the law school at NUI Galway. Can we move on to the next slide, Lisa? The second point is the way we teach law at NUI Galway. And in particular, the focus that we place on the development of skills, not just legal knowledge. Any law degree will give you legal knowledge. I teach criminal law. It's the same law that will be taught in UCD, in Trinity, in Limerick, or wherever. Criminal law is criminal law. But we have placed a very deliberate focus on the development of particular lawyerly skills. And think about the kind of skills a lawyer would need. Imagine that you're a lawyer and a potential client comes into your office and says, I have a problem. This is what happened. Help me. Well, what they're essentially asking you to do is to solve a problem that's going to require you to engage in a lot of research. You have to figure out what the relevant law is. You have to analyze the problem. You have to be able to construct an answer, construct a legal argument. And to do that, you need to synthesize huge amounts of information. And then you have to be able to present your client's argument. These are the skills that lawyers need. And traditionally, there's been sort of a belief that these skills will just develop magically all on their own. We know better. We've learned from experience that that doesn't happen. Skills, lawyers' skills are like any other skills. They need to be nurtured. They need to be developed. So we have restructured all of our programs, all of them, to put the development of skills right at the heart of what we do. And I want to talk a little bit about that. So if we can move on to the next slide, Lisa. So all of our programs are 4 years in length. And this emphasis on skills begins at day one, literally day one. In fact, you're going to spend the first month not really studying law so much as building a skills foundation. Your first month will be based on around the real basics, research skills, how to read cases. And obviously you know how to read, but there is a way of extracting information from cases that you won't be aware of. How to interpret statutes. Okay, these are basic building block skills. And you'll spend the first month doing that. And then when you move into looking at the substantive law subjects, they will be taught in such a way as we try to reinforce those foundational skills. Year two, we take that foundation and we develop it further. All law students are required to take a module on moot court. A moot court, as some of you may know, is a pretend court in which students are divided into small teams, typically 2 or 3. You're presented with a legal problem, a scenario. You have to identify the issues, you have to research the relevant law, you have to write an argument on behalf of your client, and then the fun starts, because then you go into a courtroom. And Nui Galway is very fortunate. We have a brand new state-of-the-art moot court facility on campus. And you will act as barristers, as advocates, in a courtroom setting before a judge. And the finalists of this mooting process will argue before a real High Court judge. Not a pretend one, not a faculty member, a real High Court judge. And this is not like making a speech. This is a dialogue, because the judge is going to be talking to you, asking you questions, and you have to think of answers. You're on your feet, and you have to think very, very, very fast. I ran the moot court competition for several years. Students have told me it's the single most terrifying thing they've ever done. They've also said it's the single most beneficial thing they've ever done. They learn more about being a lawyer in that 10-15 minutes on their feet, being quizzed and hassled by the judge than they did in the previous 2 years. It's a transformative experience, but more importantly, it builds on the foundation that we set in first year and brings your legal skills much, much higher. Year 3, then, we want you all, not to find a point on it, we want you to go away. We want you off campus. We want you to develop a much broader experience, either through work placement or through study abroad. And I'll come back to them in a couple of moments. In year 4, then, you come back to us and you finish out your law degree. You can specialize. Some of our programs are already quite specialized, but even our general programs have specialist streams if you want to take them. You don't have to. And your skills training culminates in a guided research essay, in which you will be assigned a faculty supervisor who will assist you and guide you and supervise you in the preparation of a research paper. And that brings together all of the skills building efforts that have gone into the previous 3 years. It's also actually really important in itself, because prospective employers and admissions officers for master's and doctoral programs are increasingly looking for a sample of the applicant's writing. Here you will have that sample ready to go, and it will have been produced in a supervised way. So it should be at a pretty high standard. So that's how we approach the study of law. We hope that at the end of it, you will have not only a good knowledge of the law, the substantive law, but you'll also have a set of well-honed skills that will enable you to start putting that legal knowledge into practice. And as far as I know, we're the only law school in the country that has redesigned its entire curriculum around the development of skills. Can we move on to the next slide, Lisa? This is very important. I mentioned that languages are very useful both on a personal level, but also on a professional level, especially if you want to travel. At NUI Galway, you have the option of taking a language as part of your degree. All of our programs offer the facility of taking a language, not on top of your degree, but as part of your degree. The precise language that's available will depend upon the program that you're taking. There is a facility to take legal Irish through all of our programs. NUI Galway has a special responsibility for the development and promotion of the Irish language, so we're very proud to be able to offer a full program of Irish through any of our programs, but also we offer French, German, and Spanish depending on the program that you have. Can we move on, Lisa, to the next slide? Thank you. Okay, I want to go back to year 3. You're off campus, broadening your experience. One way of doing that is to study abroad. NUI Galway has a very long-standing participation in the Erasmus program, under which students can travel to partner institutions around Europe. Anyone that is taking a European language, we would expect to spend that year 3 in the relevant country. So if you're studying German, we would expect you to spend year 3 in Germany. Your language skills obviously are going to go through the roof. But even if you're not taking a language, you still have multiple opportunities to study abroad. Some European countries offer instruction through English, such as Netherlands, Hungary, Poland. Or alternatively, you can go further afield to the US, to China, to Australia, to Canada, and to India. Doing so gives you the opportunity, firstly, to live in another country. That is an education in itself. Second, you get an opportunity to see how other countries are grappling with the same kind of problems that we're grappling with. And that will help you develop a degree of context. It gives you an ability to compare what we're doing with what they're doing. Maybe we're doing really well. Maybe we're not. Maybe there's things we could learn from these other countries. And thirdly, you get the opportunity to take programs and modules that simply aren't available in Ireland. So in Australia, for example, because of its proximity to Southeast Asia, there's a real interest in human trafficking, in issues of human trafficking. Our partner institution, the University of Technology in Sydney, has a research centre on human trafficking. And they offer modules in the law relating to human trafficking that's simply not available here. So those are 3 really good reasons why study abroad is such an incredible opportunity. I didn't go abroad as part of my undergrad, and I bitterly regret that. But I was fortunate enough to get a second opportunity, and I spent 4 years in the US. So I know personally the transformative effect of studying abroad. I'm so happy that the law school has built this study abroad option into its programs, and I highly encourage you to consider studying abroad. The alternative, if we can move on there, Lisa, to the next one, the alternative to study abroad is a work placement, which it's an alternative. It's not better or worse than studying abroad. It's different. The benefit of work placement is that you get to see the law in operation. You get to see it at the coalface. And we have placement agreements with a number of law firms around the country. You see there's some of the biggest and best in the country: Matheson, Goodbodies, Fry's, RDJ, and so on. These are amazing law firms, and through them you would get exposed to a variety of different areas of the law in operation. We have agreements with Government departments, you see the Department of Justice and Equality, which is more about policy formation. And we have agreements with various NGO bodies like the Irish Refugee Council, where you get to see law from a very different perspective. All of these opportunities, many of which are paid, by the way, we try to ensure that the majority of our placements are paid. Can't guarantee it, particularly with the NGO bodies. They simply don't have the money. But a large proportion of our placements are paid. So not only are you earning a bit of money, but the real payoff is the exposure that you get to the law. It may be that you come into your law program thinking, I want to be a solicitor. And then you spend a year working with a firm of solicitors, and you come out of it and you say, I don't want to be a solicitor. That's actually a really good thing. That's helping your development, helping your career plans. It may not be the way that you initially expected, but it's still useful. So the placement opportunity offers a tremendous practical kind of education. And again, it expands your horizons, expands your understanding of the law and how the law operates in practice. Can you move on to the next one, Lisa? Okay. It's also important to note that we have a range of opportunities available. On the screen there are 9 programs. The first 5 are the law school's own programs. The other 4 are programs run either by the College of Arts or our colleagues in the School of Commerce, and we contribute to them in a material way. What this list shows is that there is a variety of different ways to study law, a variety of different contexts in which you can study law at NUI Galway. Our core program, if you like, is the Bcl program. It's a 4-year law program. It's designed really for people who know that they want to be lawyers, or at least are heading towards being lawyers. They may change their opinions as they go through, but that's the way the program is structured. There are a number of specialisms available, but it is a general law degree. We then offer a number of variations on the Bcl with a particular focus, as you see there in human rights or in criminology and criminal justice. There are full law programs. Again, that needs to be stressed. The first 5 are all full law programs. We cover all of the required subjects for professional qualification. So they're full law programs. It's just that the human rights and criminology and criminal justice programs have a particular focus. We offer a degree in law and business. It's a very successful program, fairly long running at this stage, in which students are taught, again, all of the required law subjects, very high exposure to law, but they're also introduced to the fundamentals of business. And it really is designed for people who want to move into a legal career, but in a more commercial environment. And then we have our newest program, Law and Taxation. It's a very particular element of the business environment. And then we have the other possibilities of programs to which the law school, sorry, can we go back, Lisa? Programs to which the law school contributes. And I mentioned just, you know, our longest standing program is the BA in Law. It's the program actually that I took many years ago. There's a BA Government in Politics, Economics and Law. If you take a BCom degree, there's an opportunity to take a substantial amount of legal modules. And then there's the BA in Human Rights. And each of those 4 programs will lead to the option of moving into a postgraduate LLB degree, either 1 or 2 years, in order to round out your legal education. So the point of this really is that there's something for everybody. Whatever interest you have, whatever your career plans are, we have a program that will help you reach that plan, that will bring you down that road. Okay, so think very carefully about what you want to do, about where you want to go, what your plans are, what your interests are, and then match them with the appropriate program that we offer. I'm pretty confident that there'll be something there for everybody. Can we move on there, Lisa? Last thing I'll say, and I'm going to finish up very shortly, I was gone a little bit over time, keep in mind subject entry requirements, okay? There are general requirements for the university, they're specified there. For the BCL and the 2 BCL variants, you have the H5 in 2 subjects and passes in 4 other subjects, should include Irish, English, and another language. If you're looking more at law and business, law and taxation, keep in mind that there's a requirement for maths as well. Okay, so be sure that you tick all the required boxes, and then it's a matter of points. Can we move on, Lisa? Okay, I'm going to stop here. That's well, I hope a fairly comprehensive overview of studying law and what we have to offer at NUI Galway. I'm going to hand over now to my colleagues who are going to talk to you one by one about the individual programs, the 5 programs that we offer through the School of Law. They'll give you a much more detailed overview of each of those programs. So I'll sign off, and thank you very much for your attention. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope at some point we'll get to see you again at NUI Galway. Thank you.
Thank you, Conor. We will now have a short talk on our Law and Taxation programme. This talk will be presented by Professor Emer Mulligan, who is a personal professor in finance and taxation. Emer's research investigates international social, political and economic dimensions of taxation. Prior to joining NUI Galway, Emer worked as a tax consultant and manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I would now like to pass you over to Emer. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me, Lisa? Is that all good? Or Conor, maybe give me a thumbs up there if you can hear.
Yeah, I can hear you, Emer. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, great. So good morning, everybody, and it's great to get this opportunity to make a pitch, as it were, for law and taxation at NUI Galway. I mean, following on from a lot of what Conor said, I think a good starting point for this is that if you're interested in law, but perhaps you're not sure yet you want to be a lawyer as such, you might be more interested in getting exposure to other topics and subject matter that you can combine with law. And taxation is one of those subject matters. And if you opt for this degree, you're going to get a combination of what Conor outlined as a full law degree, which means you can, if you only think you like law, and then you discover you really love it and you want to continue down the law route, you can go ahead and leverage, if you like, this full law degree. But during your path of the 4 years, 3 or 4 years here, you'll also be exposed to other aspects of business, around accounting, economics, etc., and various options around those. But the big one you'll get a significant level of exposure to in this degree is taxation. And I work in the business school myself, and tax is my main area. And I can assure you that if you can combine the legal and the legal perspective with taxation, you won't be out of work for probably ever, and hopefully have a very exciting career ahead. And the ability in that context to interpret tax legislation is key. So we just hop on next slide, Lisa, please. Okay, so what are taxes? Well, I'm not going to give you a big lecture on taxes. Suffice to say, a lot of people think it's a fairly bad word. However, taxes are what we pay for, as this guy said, a civilized society. In the middle of the slide here, I've written revenue raising and based on legislation, and that's to let you know that straight off, legislation is what holds the whole tax system together, both in Ireland and across the world. And one of the primary reasons we have a tax system at all, or taxation, is to raise money, so that the government can be given that money, mind it for us, and spend it in such a way that we have this civilized society. And that's essentially what taxation is about. there are lots of arguments, lots of debate, lots of persuasion, to use the word that Conor referred earlier, around who should pay what. But at the end of the day, this module is going to expose you to what taxation is all about, and then it will let you see tax in action as it works its way through the courts, what we call revenue law. But it will open up your eyes, hopefully, to lots of opportunities where you can really, this is a rather niche area of expertise, but one of the reasons it was brought in is because it's an increasing in demand area of expertise. Okay, I'm in taxation a very, very long time. Any of my colleagues who want to be in taxation are working. But I want you to know that one of the most exciting things about this area is the 4 things that are mentioned here. I don't have time to go through them in detail, but we use the tax system as a way, for example, in Ireland, in trying to ensure maybe more wealthy people, some of their wealth is passed on to people who are not so wealthy. That's the redistribution. We also use taxation to drive certain behaviours. So, for example, if the government and society, if we generally don't want you to smoke or to drink to excess or whatever it is, or use plastic bags, we tax them. We tax that activity so that we try to stop you from doing it. And that has the obviously the nice little consequence of raising revenue at the same time. Tax is also used as a serious economic tool, and I know you're probably not watching the same news that we guys are, but at the moment, tax is at the middle of a huge problem around housing. So, and first-time buyers, and the role of vulture capital funds, etc., etc. So economically, tax is at the core. And finally, tax is at the core of the provision of public goods. By that I mean the health system that we have, the education system that you guys get to enjoy, and hopefully will continue to enjoy if you come to NUI Galway, or indeed any other public university or institute of technology. And the tax system is at the core of the current, I guess, health provisions all around COVID. You know, we're all paying into the system that allows us to have a good health system. Maybe move on to the next slide, please, Lisa. So, yeah, why choose it? Well, it's a really, hopefully, even from that quick spin around those 4 areas, you'll see it's a crucial, important area of law and policy for all businesses, but it's for the country. It's where the economy and society come together through this lever of taxation. So it's a really, really important, and it's not going away, guys. So this isn't like some high-flying idea. Very strong career prospects then come with that, and I'll give you a flavour of that in a moment, although it does overlap a little bit with what some of Conor said, but I'll put a bit more meat on the bone as to where you could end up, so to speak, if you go down this route. As a tax lawyer, then you will get to work with legislation that is very often topical, as I said, at the moment through things like the property crisis, but it receives an incredible amount of media attention. 25 years ago, when I was in taxation, nobody really talked about tax in the media. Now everybody's talking about tax in the media. It's even on social media. So it gets a lot of attention. You might have heard of a company called Apple. Apple is right at the center of a huge tax debate and a very contentious issue involving Ireland and the European Union. So you'll be right in the middle of it if that's what attracts you to it. The work is rewarding and interesting. Of course, everybody will say that. I'm passionate about taxation, and therefore I find it terribly interesting. But most people who go into tax, because it is a rather niche area, tend to be very passionate about it. And that's fantastic, because you're working with people who are all very enthusiastic about what they're doing. And there's great variety in terms of the different kinds of exposures that you can get. You can work with small business, large business, domestic business, businesses who trade internationally. And you yourselves, you know, there's a very significant international element to all aspects of taxation. Hopefully, as Conor said, some of you will end up working abroad and traveling abroad in years to come. You know, will you have to pay taxes when you travel? And if you're running a small business and then you grow and you sell things outside of Ireland, well, where do you pay your taxes? If you're selling stuff through eBay, where does the tax get collected? So all these are interesting aspects of taxation, but they're all underwritten, if you like, by the legal system. So in the end, we can have all the social debates we like around this, but the legislation is key. And that's why your ability to combine that solid law degree with this specialist area really is a great opportunity, and yeah, one I'd advise. Push on there, Lisa, and I'll just 2 more quick slides to go through. So what kind of career options? So obviously what I would say is practice is one of the big ones, which is where you start to give advice to clients, right? So that's what we call tax practice. And that tends to happen in Ireland in either accountancy firms, big, large tax and accounting firms, but they also increasingly is happening in the law firms. So Conor already referred to Math and A&L, but Goodbody, all these firms, they have tax lawyers working in those organizations. But equally, there are increasingly opportunities for you to work in corporates. Large corporates are now hiring their own tax teams, including tax lawyers. So if you take a company like even, you know, the Apples, the Googles, the Facebooks, LinkedIn, like they have very significant, a couple of those companies have in excess of 100 tax personnel working from Ireland at the moment. So this is big business. But equally, you can go the other side of the transaction and work for the revenue commissioners. They're the guys who collect the taxes, but also really the Department of Finance, because the Department of Finance have the tax legislators in there writing the laws. So that's the other side of the transaction, so to speak. The EU and the OECD offer numerous opportunities for you to work. So travel, I would say tax travels very, very well. As a discipline, it travels extremely well. And increasingly, there's great opportunities about trying to understand how all the different tax legislations across the world work when they crash up against each other. And because we're all traveling, because businesses are all doing business globally, this has also become very big business. And then just one final slide there, Lisa, is what are the attributes needed? I won't repeat the material that Conor went through necessarily, but I do want to emphasize one thing, which is about good communication here. Tax is a bit of a turn-off subject, let's be honest, for a lot of people. So the skill here is to be able to communicate tax without the jargon, without the complexity, without showing off, about being able to quote various chapters and verses of legislation. So good communication is a key strength of a prospective tax lawyer or somebody with a legal background working in taxation. Yes, it's great if you're comfortable with numbers, but you'll probably be working alongside lots of accountants and they're very comfortable with numbers. But you do need to be a details focused kind of person. Precision is what it's all about when it comes to taxation. So thanks guys for listening. That's a whistle-stop tour. Really, really great opportunities for you. It is a niche area, but it's a very much a growing area with great opportunities. So thanks. Thanks, Lisa.
Great. Thank you very, very much, Emer. Next up, we are going to do a short talk on our Law and Business programme. This will be presented by Miss Deirdre Callahan. Deirdre is the Programme Director of Law and Business and is also a lecturer in Health and Safety Law. Prior to joining NUI Galway, Deirdre worked for RTE, and Deirdre is also a member of the Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. So I'll pass you over to Deirdre now. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Law and business, well, as its title suggests, it's the interaction between both. Law and business, it impacts all of our lives. From the time we're born, we register our births, and in business contracts, even personally, maybe house purchases and so forth. So law lives with us, but with business, it grows as well. And it's a very central focus of business. So this slide breaks down the module content of law, which is 60%, and the business options there. It is a full law degree, as my colleague Conor stated. We do make sure that the entrance exams for the Law Society, the legal profession specialised streams, all the required modules are covered. So it's the addition, it is the specialised streams here where you have various pathways in the business side and options that you get to pick and choose with your degree. So some of the specialised streams there: accountancy, digital business and analytics, economics, management. But again, we're so fortunate at NUI Galway that we can offer language options. Here, your legal French, legal German, the Spanish and Irish as well. So that actually gives you even further options in year 3, which we'll talk about in a moment. So when we look at the primary part of the degree, just to reassure anyone, all of it is law with the other business options. So when we talk about these business options, next slide please, Lisa. So this means that here, just the breakdown that you see for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. Year 1 there with the core law modules, you see that working its way across the 4 years. The different business options there, accountancy modules, microeconomics, macroeconomics. You'll have commercial law, marketing, and a lot of these specialized streams may not mean a whole lot to you at the moment. However, these are options. You get to make these choices. So here, law and business is the area of law and commerce merged together. And when we look at the wide range of module options and studying this with maybe a combination of language or not, you do have the study abroad options that my colleague Connor referred to earlier. So I'm not going to go over all of that again, but just suffice to say the professional work placement, very successful module here, is really bringing together this module, the legal skills, oral presentations, advocacy, and so forth as well. So when we look at the pathways, that is dependent on your choice, your options that you decide on year with your degree. Next slide, Lisa. So careers in law and business. So when we look at these various career opportunities, you know, really it may be into private practice, where the option of becoming solicitor or barrister is the option for you there. It may be in-house, it may be with revenue, maybe with government bodies, or again, with your language element, it brings an international side to all of that. But going back to the title of the degree, Law and Business, it is just that. It is the interaction of these law modules with these business option modules with the specialised streams, be it accountancy, economics, or other. So a lot of the specialist modules won't mean a whole lot to you at the moment, but just suffice to say that they are options, they are choices, and you build on that year on year. So hopefully we'll see you in NUI Galway in September. Thanks, folks. Thanks, Lisa.
Great, thanks very much, Deirdre. I'm just going to move on to the next part of our presentation, which is on the Law Bcl Program. And I might just check if we, my colleague Dr. Brian Tobin is going to be presenting this slide. Brian is a lecturer in the School of Law, and Brian's research interests lie in family and child law, and he has contributed to the policy development in donor-assisted human reproduction and sorority. And I will now pass you over to Brian. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Hi everyone. As Connor said earlier, the BCL is our core law degree programme. It's sometimes referred to as a pure law degree, in that, unlike our other wonderful options, you simply study law within the BCL degree. There's no business or taxation. So for those of you who might just want to study law in all its wonderful aspects, the BCL might just be the degree for you. So I'll just briefly give you an insight into what you do during your 4-year BCL degree. I'll try not to overlap with what Connor said already. It is, as I said, a full law degree. It covers all the modules required for the solicitor and barrister entrance exams that you might want to pursue after your degree. There is the option to study a language on the BCL degree. The options are legal French, legal German, or legal Irish. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of an insight into the first year of the degree, because if you're thinking of joining us, I kind of want to show you what the first year experience might be like for a BCL student. So next slide, please, Lisa. So in first year, there'll be a real emphasis on developing the skills you will require as potential future lawyers. We'll be focusing on your written and oral presentation skills and your advocacy skills. And we'll be training you how to carry out legal research, as Connor said earlier, how to read case law and extract the information you need from the case law. But also in first year, you'll do your core modules. You'll do this legal skills module I've just spoken about, and then you have the option. So you can choose either to do one of our wonderful language options. As I said, there's French, German, and Irish. Or for those students who don't choose a language, they must do family law with myself. So you'll be pleased to know you'll join me for that one. And family law is something students tend to enjoy immensely. Just to give you an idea of what we do in the year-long family law course, so you'll be with me from September to April. We'll be looking at many topics such as marriage equality. We'll be looking at the recent slight liberalisation of Ireland's divorce laws. We'll spend a lot of time on children's rights, where we'll look at more modern family forms, such as children conceived via donor conception, or children born to surrogate mothers and parented by other persons. So very topical issues that are in the news a lot lately as well. So that's a module I think you'll enjoy if you do come to join us in first year and beyond. But moving beyond perhaps the first year experience then, we might go to the next slide, please, Lisa. In the following years, you'll continue in year 2, for example, you'll continue with your core modules, legal skills module, and another optional module in second year. As Connor said, I don't want to repeat too much of that, but in year 3, you'll have the option of either a work placement with our wonderful work placement partners, or you'll have the option of studying abroad. Studying abroad being particularly important for the students who choose a language, of course. And we have wonderful partner institutions for studying abroad in the EU, Canada, the US, and even as far as China. So in final year then, Connor mentioned earlier the specialist streams that you can choose in final year should you choose to do so, or you can just remain as you are and pick and choose your modules. But when you complete your degree, I just want to speak a little bit about where you can go thereafter. It's often a big question at open days. So you can, if you wish to become a solicitor, you can sit the FE1 entrance examinations for the Law Society, and you must pass the entrance examination in 8 subjects. All of those subjects are covered in the BCL degree, so you'll have studied them already. You'll be just brushing up really to sit these exams. Students usually secure an apprenticeship, which can be good, because if you secure an apprenticeship with a law firm, they'll usually fund your time at Blackhall Place, which is where you will go to attend and pass the Law Society examinations. And when you qualify as a solicitor, you are, of course, entered on the roll of solicitors. Some students choose the option of a career as a barrister. And again, you must sit the King's Inns entrance examination in 5 subjects. Again, all of these will be covered in the Bcl degree. You'll take the King's Inns Barrister at Law degree, a 1-year degree, and ultimately be called to the Irish Bar. So those are your career options within law. But as the next slide shows, there are career options outside of law. And not all of you will choose to practice as a solicitor or a barrister, or some of you might delay that option. So what a lot of students now do is they spend time as a paralegal, okay, or in other roles before pursuing the law options. But the knowledge you'll gain in your degree, and especially the skills you'll gain within the law degree, will ensure your employability in many other areas. For many years before becoming the program director of the Bcl program, I served as director of student career development. So I tend to know where our graduates go and what they're interested in. People go into all sorts of fields other than law. There's banking, journalism, research, marketing, compliance, online compliance. In fact, we have a lot of graduates working for Twitter, Google. People go into client outreach roles. So there are a whole host of options, which again, I can discuss with you along the way as you're pursuing the degree. I suppose just one final thing I might mention. I'm not sure if there is another slide, Lisa, for the Bcl. Can't remember if there are 3 or 4. That's it. Okay, well, I'll just talk for a moment. So one final thing I would mention is that with the Bcl degree, students can also go on to further study, and we haven't really discussed much of that yet. So we have Bcl graduates going on to be accepted in institutions like Oxford, Cambridge, London School of Economics. That is an option for you as well. To just point out that the points in 2020 were 499. The intake is small, so there are 50 usually on our intake, which is quite a nice number, smallish class, and you can get to hopefully know all of your peers. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you, Lisa.
Great, thanks very much, Brian, for that. Next up, we are going to talk about our Law Bcl, Criminology and Criminal Justice course. And Dr. Dermot Griffin is here to join us to talk about this course. Dermot is the Programme Director of this course, and he is also a lecturer in Criminology and Criminal Justice. Dermot is also the leading author of the book Killing Time, Life Imprisonment and Parole in Ireland. So I'll pass you over to Dermot now. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks to everyone who's joining in today. Today I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the criminology and criminal justice side of this degree. You've already had a talk about the law degree, and like the previous speakers were saying, this is a full law degree, so you're doing your Bcl with an additional specialisation in criminology and criminal justice. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what criminology and criminal justice is, you know, the structure of the programme, what some of our graduates have done working in the field of criminal justice, that have graduated with a law degree, and also some of the staff teaching on this programme. So first of all, what is criminology? So criminology really is about the study of why people commit crime. And, you know, it's a discipline that dates back a couple of centuries. And when it first kind of emerged in the 18th, 19th century, criminologists thought they could find out a simple cause of crime and solve that crime problem. So eradicate crime from society. But actually, as we've developed over the centuries, there's been a lot of different disciplines contributing to the study of criminology, and criminologists ask questions that are much more complex now. So things like, for example, the prison population, 95% of prison population is male. So it leads us to questions of why is it that men commit so much more crime than women? What is it about the male that makes him so criminogenic? So these are kind of issues that we'll explore when looking at the discipline of criminology. Other kind of criminological questions would be things like, you know, are biological factors an influence on people's behaviour and their likelihood of rule breaking or breaking the criminal law, or are social and environmental factors more influential on people's behaviour? So criminologists have often debated those two issues, and they kind of feed into that nature-nurture debate that is evident in sociology more generally. So criminologists also ask questions of the system. You know, why is it that the criminal law seems to focus more on ordinary crime or low-level crimes versus crimes of the powerful, or white-collar crime, crimes of organisations or corporate organisations or governments. So there seems to be a disjoint there. If we look at our prison population, it seems to reflect those of a certain socioeconomic background, but we know that that doesn't reflect the level of offending behaviour in society across the social classes. So criminologists ask these kind of questions in order to try and assess how we measure crime, how we look at offending behaviour, how society responds to those who break the rules. In terms of the criminal justice side of the course, criminal justice really focuses on the system. So in criminal law, for example, we focus on, an individual act. A person acts in a certain way, and did they intend to break the rules and commit that act, right? But with criminal justice, we're looking at the system and how the system responds to those people who are alleged to have broken the rules. So sometimes we think of it in legal terms. We might think of the jury system, which decides the guilt or innocence of a person. But there are other more complex questions and kind of institutions that are at play also. Think about the policing process. What powers do the police have to enter your home or to stop you and arrest you, or what are the rules surrounding the powers that they have, which is really important because it affects us all as citizens, and what kind of mechanisms of accountability are there when the police break the rules, for example. That's another kind of part of the criminal justice system. And think about sentencing offenders. When a person has been found guilty, what factors do we take into consideration when we are sentencing a person? Is it the seriousness of the offence, or should we take into consideration the circumstances of the offender? Should we take into consideration their likelihood of committing further offences when they're released from prison, for example, if they're being sentenced to a term of imprisonment? So they're all the elements of the criminal justice system that we will be exploring in those modules in the degree. In terms of the structure of the degree, it's a 4-year degree similar to the other BCL modules, and you will also be covering some of the core fundamental legal foundations in first year, second year, and in final year of the degree. Really, this degree just adds additional components of criminology and criminal justice to your degree, so it's kind of an additional skill set, if you like. But you still have all the kind of key modules that you would need if you want to become a solicitor and a barrister. So in the first year, you'll study criminology and criminal justice. They will be your kind of foundational subjects as well as your legal subjects. In second year, you'll be looking at more advanced modules, advanced criminology, advanced criminal justice. You'll study criminal law. You'll also study a module in psychology called forensic and abnormal psychology. So those modules will kind of build on what you learned in first year. In third year, as some of the other speakers were saying, you will have the option of study abroad, or you can do a work placement. You might want to do a work placement in the area of criminal justice, or you might want to do a work placement with a general legal firm or whatnot. There's decisions that you might make in second year of the degree when you have a bit more of an idea of what you would like to do, maybe in terms of gaining experience when you go into the workplace. And of course, in the final year, like maybe the other degree programs, there's more options available to you there in your final year, depending on what you envisage for yourself in terms of your career when you graduate. You might want to do some more legal modules to build up your experience there, or you might want to do some modules unrelated to criminology and criminal justice if you want to gain a further specialism, or you want to focus more on the criminology, criminal justice side of things. It will really depend on what you kind of experience in your first couple of years of your degree and how you want to graduate in terms of specialisms within the final year of your degree. I just want to talk briefly about the graduate program and our graduates in terms of, I think the slides haven't gone forward there for you, but unfortunately you missed that, but hopefully you got the point from what I was talking about. What have our graduates working in the field of criminal justice, what have they gone on to do really when they graduated from the program? Well, I sometimes think when students are looking at law degrees, they think of solicitor and barrister, and sometimes it's difficult to envisage, the other pathways. So here are some of our own graduates who are working in the field of criminal justice. Some of them are working in research. Some of them are PhD students, or they're lecturers teaching criminology and criminal justice, We have some solicitors working, for example, in the anti-money laundering division with the central bank. There are some of our students working as researchers with the Law Reform Commission, for example, doing reports on legal reform that might be implemented by the government subsequently, or recommending changes to the law. Of course, there's barristers working in the criminal law specialisation. We have had a number of graduates who are working as members of the Gardaí, so they got their law degree and then they went on to become members of the Gardaí. We've got judicial research assistants recently working in the criminal division of the Court of Appeal, and parliamentary advisors to the Minister of State. So the whole range of different career paths that people end up doing. Maybe they don't go in with that perspective from school, but on gaining experience and finding out what they would like to do and the different elements that they would want to focus on, they've gone other directions, maybe away from being a solicitor into other fields also. And just finally, to focus on who's going to be delivering the course and the experience. We have a range of different people with expertise in the area of criminology and criminal justice, many of whom contribute not just in terms of their own research in the field of criminal justice, but also contributing to public policy, media debates about criminal justice. Conor Hanley, for example, your speaker earlier, is an expert on, he wrote the report Rape and Justice in Ireland, which has been very influential, published by the Rape Crisis Network, and is often cited in debates about sexual violence. As Tom O'Malley, another lecturer there in the programme, he is involved in a lot of media debates, a lot of contribution to public policy, a lot of contribution to reports commissioned by the government in the area of sexual offending, in the area of sentencing. So we have a whole range of different people who will be able to give you the expertise and the time to develop your own skills in the field of criminology and criminal justice, while also graduating with a full law degree. I think I'll finish up there. Hopefully, if you have any questions, I'll be there later for the Q&A, and I'll hand back over to Lisa now.
Great, thank you very much, Dermot. Our last talk, our last course that we're going to talk about now is the Law Bcl and Human Rights course, and I am joined by Dr. Maeve O'Rourke. Maeve is a lecturer in human rights at the Irish Centre for Human Rights. The Irish Centre for Human Rights is a centre that is part of Nui Galway School of Law. Maeve is the Programme Director of the Law Bcl in Human Rights and also a barrister at 33 Benford Row. Earlier this year, Maeve was appointed to a team to work on establishing an independent investigation into the mother and baby homes. And I will now pass you over to Maeve. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Lisa. And it's lovely to see that picture there of our students. I hope you can hear me now, can you?
I can hear you, Maeve, thanks.
Great. It's lovely to see that picture there. That is some of our students from the Irish Centre for Human Rights joining a protest march last year. So as you'll come to see in the rest of my presentation, we do a lot of human rights practical work within the Irish Centre for Human Rights, and that's something that our undergraduate students can get involved in, and along the way meet all of the postgraduate students that we also have at the Irish Centre for Human Rights. So just moving to the first slide, I want to introduce you to the very basics of the Law and Human Rights degree. So as Brian said at the beginning, this is one of the full law degrees, so it is possible for you to take all of the subjects that you will need if you wish to become a solicitor or a barrister. And then there are the language options, which is legal French or legal German or Irish, but not Spanish on this degree because that is reserved for the law and business students. And then, like with the other law degrees, there is the option to do the specialist stream. So what I'll explain now is what is different about the Law and Human Rights degree. So the first thing, I suppose, very basically, is that in first year, the cohort of law and human rights students, which is in the range of about 30, they are together for a 10 credit course, which is actually a double module in the second semester. And so over 4 hours a week, they have a very intensive, what I think is very exciting experience of getting to know each other, getting to know the staff, and like I mentioned, our postgraduate masters and PhD students in the Irish Centre for Human Rights, which is a specific building. Anyone who's been on campus might have noticed the yellow building that's at the very beginning of campus, just opposite the cathedral. That is the Irish Centre for Human Rights. And so our first year students spend 4 hours a week in second semester learning with me a module called Human Rights, Law, Concepts, Contemporary Issues, and Philosophies. And I suppose that's a very important part of this degree, because one of the issues about human rights lawyering and going on into the world of work of human rights lawyering is that doing it with friends and having a strong community around you is extremely important, because it is quite a counter-cultural way of doing law. As I'll explain, human rights law and human rights as a concept is all about challenging the status quo, asking, is this the right way to treat people? Is there injustice here? Is this the way the law should be actually? So forms of law that sit below, you know, constitutional rights or other rights. And so you're often questioning and often arguing that the way things are in society is not how they should be. And it's really important to have a strong group of people around you as you do that. And also those who are interested in law and human rights, it's important that as they go through their degree, that they feel well supported and that they have other people around them who also are looking at less traditional ways of work, possibly not so focused on corporate and possibly focused on avenues of work. It might be international, it might be in the NGO sector here in Ireland, but avenues that can feel a little bit more difficult to navigate, that there's not just the straight structure available to you as a trainee in the corporate firm, for example. So I think it's wonderful that that cohort of 30 students gets to spend so much time together. So just moving on then, I want to introduce you very quickly to some of the people in the Irish Centre for Human Rights, because this is really the amazing thing about this degree, and I think something that contributes to the students' immense learning in their 4 years, 3 years in Galway, of course, and 1 year in third year outside of the campus, is that from day one, you're not just doing your core modules. As an undergraduate student, you are receiving all of the invitations to everything that happens in the Irish Centre for Human Rights, and that is weekly lunchtime seminars by experts in human rights, both in Ireland and internationally. For example, here's some of our students, some more students going on climate strike at the beginning of last academic year. They're master's students. They were joined by undergraduate students. In the top right corner, you'll see Professor Siobhan Mullally, who's the director of the Irish Centre for Human Rights. She is currently the UN Special Rapporteur on Trafficking, which is the foremost international expert in the world, protecting the human rights of people subjected to trafficking and intervening in states' efforts to have laws that sufficiently prevent human trafficking and protect people who have been placed in situations of trafficking. So she has immense experience. To the top left, I've noted the International Criminal Court Summer School, just to make the point, but you'll see this if you go onto the website of the centre, that we have very expert professors of international humanitarian law and international criminal law, Professor Shane Darcy, Professor Ray Murphy, who not only operate, I suppose, as academics, but also advise governments all over the world and also international institutions. And our first year students and second year students are all invited to come to our summer school in June on the International Criminal Court. We have a human rights podcast. Our undergraduate students are as welcome as our postgraduate students to get involved in making podcasts if they wish, and like I say, in engaging in everything that goes on. And there's a picture of me in the bottom right, just to, I suppose, prompt the point that in addition to my academic work, like all of my colleagues in the Centre for Human Rights, I am frequently doing practical human rights advocacy, both in Ireland, in Europe and internationally, to try and change state practice. And I have a particular background in advocating for the rights of people who were subjected to so-called historical abuse in Ireland. So just moving quickly to the next slide, the last thing I want to mention about the Irish Centre for Human Rights is that it's also the home to the Global Legal Action Network, which you can also look up. And they are currently taking a case to the European Court of Human Rights on behalf of young people in Portugal, and they are taking it against 33 countries in relation to climate injustice. And they are also taking cases, for example, here on the left, in relation to the placement of people seeking asylum into inflatable rafts and sending them back out to sea off the coast of Greece. So all of that work is available for you to get involved in on an extracurricular basis, as well as having guest lectures in our courses. So moving on very quickly, what is the study of human rights? So I just want to really briefly introduce you to the fact that this is a very creative area of law, because human rights is a concept that is not just a legal one. So by studying human rights alongside your law degree, you will be introduced to other disciplines. Philosophy, because human rights is a philosophical concept as well as a legal one. It's where the law comes from. And so in first year with me, you will be introduced to questions of what it means to be human, what it is that we all share, why is it that we all have particular entitlements, what are those entitlements, what is injustice, what does equality mean? And these are important questions to think about, because human rights law is very flexible and it's open to interpretation over time. And so where do we get the content for what international law or the Irish Constitution or other human rights laws, where do we get the content for what those laws actually mean? A lot of it is about philosophical thought, and in particular I introduced my first years to feminist theories of power and oppression and inequality. And so moving on, human rights is also, importantly, a political idea. And so this is important to realise too, and this brings you as a law student into another discipline as well, of politics and political thought. So over the centuries, the notion of who we are as humans, philosophically speaking, that we uniquely have the capacity to reason, means that actually how the state should act is that it should stay out of our business and give us freedom of speech, give us freedom to assemble. So we see that constitutions come from philosophical ideas of human rights, and particular ideas about how the state should treat citizens mean that certain human rights find more prominence than others, depending on the country, depending on the constitution. So at the moment in Ireland, you may know that there are whole debates over whether we should have a constitutional right to housing. And we protect more civil and political rights, freedoms from invasion in our privacy, rather than rights to socioeconomic resources. And that's a choice, and it's not something that's set in stone. So we will look at political ideas of human rights. And then moving on, lastly, I suppose the key area of human rights in terms of your study is, of course, the legal instruments that came from the international community of states realizing that what happened in World War II needed laws in place to prevent it ever happening again. And so we see the European Convention on Human Rights coming from that period, and all of the international human rights treaties with the creation of the UN itself. And okay, so moving on then to what I had last to finish up. What work does a human rights lawyer do? It is an extremely creative degree, I think, because what a human rights lawyer does is an extremely creative field. So if you go into practice, and you can see there a picture of a barrister, Alexander Wilson, who actually is a young barrister in the UK who's brought out a brilliant book called In Black and White about racism within the legal profession. But if you go into legal practice as a human rights lawyer, you're often involved in actually challenging the way that the law currently works. So it's an exciting way of practicing law. You might get involved in movements for social change. And so I have pictures there of people doing essentially what might also be considered investigative journalism, and finding evidence, going out, filming, taking notes, interviewing people. You might get involved in advocacy for political change. So you might be working with an NGO that's advocating for new laws. So I have a picture there of giving evidence to the Oireachtas. Or you might be working in fields of law that might not be considered human rights law, but actually are protecting human rights on a daily basis. So up the top middle, the picture of the lawyers who all rushed to US airports when Donald Trump brought in his immigration ban to actually do their work as immigration lawyers, which is of course human rights work. So that's the point, I suppose, also to say that so many areas of law, criminal law, housing law, education law, family law, all involve protecting human rights on a daily basis, and studying human rights alongside your law degree will really enable you to see that fact and to do that work as best you can. So that's all I'll say, and I hope that we can answer your questions later as well.
Great, thank you very much, Maeve. I'm just going to move on to the last slide. That brings us to the end of this talk. We have another talk at 1 o'clock where we have 4 of our current students talk about their student law experience at NUI Galway. So we hope you will join us at 1 o'clock. And then from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, if you have any questions on studying law at NUI Galway, please join us at 2 o'clock. We will have a number of academics on hand to answer any questions that you have. If you would like to find out more information about studying law at NUI Galway, you can visit our website at www.nuigalway.ie/law, or you can email us at law@nuigalway.ie, and you can also follow us on social media at NUIG Law on Instagram. So thanks very much for your time. We hope to speak to some of you a little bit later on, and if not, I suppose we look forward to welcoming some of you maybe this September or perhaps next September, depending on what year you're in. So thanks very much, and hope to see some of you later.